All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Want to welcome you guys to the regularly scheduled council meeting for the governing body of Spring Hill, Kansas on Thursday, February 13th, 2025. We don't have a pastor available this evening, but if, what's that? You'll do it? Okay, I'll do it this time. I'll go ahead and do the invocation if you guys will stand with me if you're able. Father God, thank you once again for bringing us here together, God, to try to make the best decisions for our community and for the city that we love. Just pray for wisdom and guidance as we do that. Pray for everyone out here in this cold, God. Just keep everyone safe and keep everyone safe out on the streets. And thank you for the hard workers that are out there keeping them clear for each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen. Please remain standing for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Sorry. Mr. Young?
Here.
Mr. Peel?
Here.
Mrs. Feeback?
Here.
Mr. Grant?
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum present.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. We did have a couple revisions, executive sessions. Other than that, are there any other requested changes? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. Next, we'll move on to citizen participation. This is time when the public can come in and speak about anything that they would like to speak about. We do ask if you would like to talk about something that you would step up and state your name and your address. We did not have anyone sign up on the list, but if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak, now would be your time. If not, we'll go ahead and close citizen participation at this time and move on to a presentation. We've got a presentation by Captain Khan about the Police Department Life Saving Award. This is a pretty cool one.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. We obviously like to highlight the great things that our officers do, and they do those things every day. But when there's something that really goes above and beyond, we want to give it some special recognition. So I'm going to read you the award citation that I submitted to you guys and that I sent to the state. On Saturday, February 1st, 2025, at approximately 10:05 hours, Officers Johnson and McGill were dispatched to the 17100 block of West 197th Terrace to a medical call. The officers would later learn after arriving on the call that the person had become stiff, slouched over, and no longer had a pulse and was no longer breathing. Medical calls happen every day, and they often don't require officers to assist in them. However, we're trained to respond to each call with the same vigor, regardless of how it's broadcast. This call would not prove to be like one of the many typical medical calls officers receive and respond to. Officer Johnson was the first to arrive and had the forethought to retrieve an AED, which is an electronic external defibrillator, before entering the residence to begin assisting the subject. As Officer Johnson entered the residence, he encountered a 41-year-old female subject who was unconscious on the floor. The subject was not moving, and the color had drained from her face. Another female in the residence was performing CPR on that unconscious female. Officer Johnson immediately began taking control of the scene, giving directions to the female performing CPR. At the same time, he applied the AED pads to the unconscious female. While Officer Johnson applied the AED pads, Officer McGill arrived. Officer Johnson took over CPR from the bystander. After a short time, the AED read that a shock was necessary. Officer Johnson delivered the initial shock. He then immediately returned to CPR. Officer McGill retrieved a breathing mask and assisted with rescue breaths on the unconscious female, while Officer Johnson performed CPR. After 2 CPR cycles, Officer Johnson checked the AED once more, and it once again read that a shock was necessary. Officer Johnson delivered the second shock. Officer McGill then took over CPR while Officer Johnson took over rescue breathing. Officer McGill continued CPR, completing 4 cycles before EMS and the fire department arrived. As Officer McGill completed her last CPR cycle, the unconscious female began breathing on her own. She then began to move her head and arms while speaking. At this point, it had been nearly 15 minutes since the female subject lost consciousness. EMS transported her to an area hospital, and officers followed up the next day to check on her. They learned that she was going to make a full recovery, with no brain damage. Without the dedication and quick thinking and diligent critical life-saving maneuvers of Officers Johnson and McGill, this level of recovery would likely not have been possible. Every day, our officers go out and perform their duties regardless of weather, time of day, family obligations, or other situations. On this day, a woman got a second chance at life because Officer Johnson and Officer McGill reacted quickly, used their training, and demonstrated calm and courage that was necessary to save her life. We set forth our mission of serving with integrity and protecting the vulnerable to enhance the quality of life for our Spring Hill community. Officers Johnson and McGill not only served with great integrity, they also protected a vulnerable person in our community. These officers truly embody the mission of our police department in our city. Without our community, we could not exist. And without dedicated officers like Officer Johnson and Officer McGill, the police department could not support this mission. It is with tremendous pride and great pleasure that I award Officer Jeremy Johnson and Officer Madison McGill the department's life-saving awards for their heroic actions on that day. Thank you both for your dedication and service to the community.
Would you actually be able to stand behind, like scoot back a little bit? There you go. Scoot back, like Steve. Yeah. There you go. Sorry, words are hard. 1, 2, 3. Yep, looks good. No, it's not. I know. Something like that. 1, 2, 3. Can we do one really Let's stand behind on the other side of this. That way that's centered behind you. There, middle. That's great. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1 and done. Thank you.
You want this?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, it's the high. Sorry.
Yeah.
That may-
That's fine.
All right, that's awesome, guys. Congrats and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to another presentation by the Police Department and Captain Khan on the Police Department year-end report.
All right, I know we've got a lot going on tonight, so I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. So I'll move through this pretty quick. If you have any questions, feel free. Nope. All right. So, as always, our priorities are people, community, and creating safe and secure environments. We address people by serving with respect, which is part of our core values, and then by enhancing training, technology, and culture within the police department. Community, by community outreach and problem solving, talking to people, figuring out where problem areas are and addressing them that way. And then creating safe and secure environments by crime prevention, criminal patrol, and traffic safety. This is our organizational chart, 17 officers. You have seen this before, so we have sergeants that oversee the officers on the streets, and then right now me overseeing the rest of them. People, in 2024, we have a total of 17 sworn positions. We've had 0 hires, but 30 applications and interviewed 11 people. This was our first full year with 2 community liaison officers. We've recognized several officers for living the values. We've recognized multiple officers with department commendations, including today, and 5 employees as top performers in select categories during the year. As far as training, we put together 1,421 hours in training today, which is an average of 89 per officer. It's over double the requirement for officers per year. Equipment-wise, we purchased Taser 10s. We were the first in the metro to field those. Rifle suppressors and optics on handguns. Technology, we purchased EOC radios and put together an EOC plan in order to better coordinate services between Public Works, fire, other emergency services, and ourselves. And then we created a Power BI statistics and analytical system that allows us to track statistics in real time instead of waiting for a month to 2 months for the statistics to be brought to us. That allows us to kind of assess where needs are. For training, we've hosted and participated in joint trainings throughout the metro. We've also done a lot of in-house trainings, which we've invited other agencies into. And we've sent officers to numerous outside trainings where they can bring those trainings back to the department. Organizational integrity, we had 16 uses of force, 9 fail to yields, which is a vehicle that runs from us that we didn't pursue, 3 vehicles that we did pursue. We had 8 complaints filed, 2 of them were sustained, 6 were unfounded. We had 10 internal affairs investigations. On the community end, we do a pretty good job of engaging in community events. All of the officers participate in that, and that's driven primarily by our community liaison officers who you just saw get an award today, Officer Johnson and Officer McGill. They do a great job at organizing these, including getting us an award this year for participation in National Night Out. With that allows us to talk to the community and get a lot of input and insights that we may not get if we didn't have those community connections. As far as crime stats, ag assaults and batteries are severe person crimes are up slightly. Sex crimes are up a little bit. Robberies, we've maintained a straight 0 for quite a while. Our person crimes have gone up. Our auto burglaries have stayed pretty consistent. We had 1 auto theft, 9 burglaries. Drug arrests have been up. The officers are also hitting specific areas a little harder and getting those drug arrests. We took about the same amount of reports. We're usually below 1,000. We had 1 year that we were above, right at 911 this year. And then our high lethality domestic violence incidents were at 12, which is pretty consistent with where we are with a couple kind of statistically insignificant years. As far as crashes, injury crashes, 20, which is a little bit further up than our normal average. Non-injury is pretty consistent with our average at 81. Total crashes is 101. Majority of those are highway related. Alcohol related crashes, 12. We had 2. We had 12 hit and runs. For DUI enforcement, we had 30 DUIs, so hopefully preventing some more of these crashes by virtue of looking for DUIs. We made 3,425 traffic stops and issued 1,049 violations, which is about 32%, which is pretty on par with our average. K-9 deployments, we had 27 total deployments. 7 of those were building searches, tracks, and article searches. The other 20 were narcotics sniffs. The K-9 officer maintained 193.75 hours with his dog, which is an average of 16.15 per month. 20 deployments assisting outside agencies and 7 deployments within Spring Hill. Property and records. Last year we got rid of a lot of very old pieces of evidence that we had. We did an audit, found a lot of these were 10 to 20-year-old pieces of evidence that were no longer relevant. So our purges are a little bit lower this year because we have less things in evidence that need to be purged. Fingerprints, we allow citizens to come in, get their fingerprints done. Records requests, pretty similar. When we have court cases, we end up getting records requests. We issued fewer warrants this year, which means more people are actually coming to court when they're supposed to, as opposed to kind of blowing off the court situation. Animal control calls, when I put this together, we did not have the stats in yet because those are not tied into Power BI. So I'm waiting to get those, and I can get those to you once we get those in. I would imagine they're pretty on par with what we had last year. As far as our goals in 2024, less lethal and lethal weapon technology upgrades in the EOC plan and radios, we satisfied those. We appreciate your help on that. 2025, we plan to work on continuing our state accreditation with completion by 2026, to be one of the first agencies our size to actually achieve state accreditation. So splitting that up in the spring, we're looking at some uniform updates that Chief Henson and I started and have continued to work through the year. And then looking into some safe vehicle stopping technology. There's a sergeant who has taken that on as his cause. And then in the fall, again, working towards state accreditation with a completion by 2026 and to certify 2 of our 3 apartment communities in crime-free multi-housing. And that is all I have. Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I want to say thank you. Appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for stepping in for the chief. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
What does the accreditation process entail, and what does that mean?
If you've got about 6 hours, I can give you the full rundown. So essentially, it is bringing all of our policies in line with what is considered state best practices. Those are based off of a national accreditation standard. Essentially, if you have a policy that says this, this, and this, you fall into those standards. It entails going through all of our policies, making sure they're consistent with each standard, and then showing proof of that standard being satisfied. So let's say we have a policy on juvenile arrest that says that juveniles have to be sight and sound separated. We would have to have that policy and then be able to show that not only do we have it, but we've used it, and here's how we've used it. With that, once that's all put together and the agency can prove all of those standards, we can end up lowering our insurance liability and some of our civil liability.
Oh, okay, cool. No, yeah, I thought that was interesting. I wasn't quite sure exactly what it all entailed, but I was like, I know it's usually a lot bigger departments than ours, so.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
And I remember,
Sergeant Venzel and I have been kind of working on that, and it's intensive.
and I remember Chief talking about it probably a year and a half ago, maybe initially, when you guys kind of started the process.
Well, cool.
Did I see your traffic stops was like 300 or 400 more or 500 more or one of the slides on there? Was that?
Yeah,
It was a pretty good jump.
Yep.
Yeah.
The officers have been a lot more proactive. with
That's
traffic.
what I was going to ask. Like, is that with us being fully staffed and not having much turnover or 0 turnovers? Like, are we able to do that more efficiently?
Yeah, part of it is being able to have our minimums on the streets and actually having officers have time to go through and do that.
Mm-hmm.
They've also been attacking more areas where traffic is a problem, whether it's community complaints of speed or areas where we have crashes and traffic enforcement is more warranted.
but even with that, there was only, 16 more tickets than last year,
Right.
even though there was, 600, 700 more.
Yeah, and citations don't always solve problems. Enforcement by education is one of the pillars
Yeah.
of traffic enforcement. So if you stop somebody and you explain to them, hey, here's why I stopped you. Example we like to give is a windy road, right? Somebody's speeding on that. It doesn't seem like it makes sense to cap the speed at 35 miles per hour when you could easily do 45. People turn out of those without seeing where someone's coming from. If you stop that person and say, hey, the reason is we had a crash here 3 days ago where somebody was injured because they pulled out thinking the cars in front of them were going 35 when they were actually going 50. You've stopped it for the speed and you've corrected the issue. So the enforcement part of that also includes education. It doesn't always have to be a ticket.
I would view it as increased engagement, which is a good thing.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. These are items that the staff considers to be routine maintenance, but if there are any questions or comments on that one, now would be the time. If not, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. Next, we'll move on to formal council action at this time. And the first item on the agenda is consider approval of a funding request from KDOT to assist with the K7 corridor study. And Mrs. Abel, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Mayor. So this item before you is a request to assist with a local match. KDOT, about 15, 20 years ago, they performed a transportation study on the K7 corridor. It started all the way up north and went past us all the way down to the south. So they are going to be revisiting that effort and doing the K7 corridor, and it will encompass Olathe as well as Spring Hill. So in order to facilitate this $600,000 study, the KDOT has requested that the cities and the county help participate and pay for our fair share of the local match. Olathe has already committed the $67,000 for their portion of the local match. There is a request into Johnson County for their $67,000 local match, and the item before you today is our fair share of that third of the local match at $67,000. This is a very important study. As you know, there's a lot of traffic incidents along Highway 169 K7 corridor. We have a lot of projects that are in the pipeline for that segment as well. So being in coordination with KDOT and getting more feedback and studying that corridor should help us in the future with possible funding or other opportunities in the future. So this is a step in the right direction, and it would go a long way to have the support of the city of Spring Hill in this effort. With that, I recommend approval of the funding match at $67,000 to assist with the local match for the KDOT K7 corridor study. I'm available if you have any questions.
Well, I know for me, I never liked studies, but it's kind of one of those evils that you have to do. So, and for me, it's a really important one because it's the first one of the big steps in getting lights along 169, especially at 191st Street. So, if it means another stinking study, then I guess we'll do it.
I'll propose that as the title of this effort, another stinking study.
Well, they didn't do anything with the last study. That's why it bothers me a little bit.
Yeah,
Is they
it's a
did
little
one and
frustrating.
Well,
didn't
that
do
was,
anything with it. So.
yeah, that was.
Well, it didn't have anything to do with
ago.
us. I mean, it was years ago, but still, thousands of dollars spent years ago with nothing really to show from it. So.
The cost share is not bad on this one.
Are we an actual third of the area? That was my question next, because I know we're the smallest entity by far. We're putting in the same amount of money as
Yeah,
everybody else.
I was hopeful that we would have.
Probably more.
Yeah, I was hopeful.
Our
that they would
roadway is
give
more
us
than a
a-
third.
Yeah,
With 169 highway.
just north of 175th Street.
Oh, is that all it's going? That's all they're studying?
That's our portion of it, and then they're gonna stop just south of I-35.
Oh, so it's not going up to the actual K7 corridor? Yeah. That was my question. I'm like, if it goes all the way up to like,
Leavenworth. and-
K10, I'd be like, well, then it feels like we're paying a lot.
They'll study that at some point, but due to our growth and the traffic patterns that are occurring now, they wanna do this portion of it right now.
So this is going from basically 154th to 223rd.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense than we pay a third.
Still was hoping that they would kick in a little bit more since they have a little bit bigger pot, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
When would the study start?
I think we have we've already met a couple of times to talk about the study and everything. As far as actually engaging it, I would think that they would still need to hire a consultant and do all of that work. So later this year, it should be underway.
Says KDOT's gonna put out an RFP in March.
I just want to make sure it's moving along, that's all.
Yeah.
We've been talking about stuff for a while, so.
We've been talking about a lot of stuff for a while.
Yeah.
We need to start.
But yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to see something happen later this year and have a study by beginning of next year.
And the study is to find out what's the end game plan with the study? Like, what are we trying to figure out?
I'm envisioning it's gonna be a glorified traffic study. They're gonna look at the growth that we've experienced over, since the last time we studied this area, how much growth we anticipate over the next 20 years. And they'll just do a projection of what that's gonna look like, how that's gonna impact our roadways, what kind of volumes are we gonna see at some of these intersections. There's gonna be some modeling efforts to look at the traffic demand and try to anticipate what those future improvements would look like. And what would make sense as an interim improvement, like a traffic signal at some of these key intersections, all the way up to when does it make sense and when would it trigger an interchange or something a little bit more significant than a traffic signal. So it's a lot of traffic engineers studying a lot of traffic data.
So this will give us some answers on what we can or can't do right now. Or is this more of just like, well, this is kind of what we think is going to happen over the next 50 years?
I think this will go parallel with what we're trying to do right
I was
now.
gonna say, do we have to have this for like 191st?
No,
Okay, so this is on top of that.
we anticipate the 191st moving quicker.
Okay,
And that it'll be, I'll call it an interim measure that may last 10 or 15 years.
yeah,
And then at some point, you know, based on the increased traffic modeling, there could be, like Allison indicated, interchanges or an additional third lane. So it could be a 6-lane through there. But they'll go through and look at all that modeling and determine what that needs to be.
okay.
Good.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want this to push
I
it
know,
back even
the-
further.
Yeah,
Like, oh, we gotta wait for this study now before we can do anything else.
Well, and I'm hopeful that some of the things that we're finding with the SS4A and some of the crash data and all of that, some of those trends, that those will get folded into this as well.
Yeah, it's just I always get nervous with the studies because I feel like we do them, but there's no actionable items at the end, and we just have a study that doesn't do anything. So as long as this is gonna have some actionable items at the end, I'm fine with it. It's just it's always a concern I have, just because I feel like we have a lot of those, done a lot of studies, and then we're like, well, now we have information, so we can do another study. Or,
I would feel better about this one because KDOT's spearheading it.
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, with them being the main backer of this, they know that there's issues down here,
Yeah.
especially that 175th and 169 intersection.
my bigger concern was just holding up what we already have
Our
kind of
other
going
stuff.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this helps
This will help in the future for getting funding for additional intersections.
I think the study will help get us on the state transportation plan on the STIP.
Yeah.
And if we can get onto that, that helps us get to the mix of getting funding for interchanges or other signalization projects.
All right, cool.
Like that.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
You ready? Move to approve the funding request from KDOT for the K7 corridor study in the amount of $67,000.
second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. Thank you very much. With that, that ends formal council action at this time. Pretty short one for that. We'll move on to announcements and reports. I'm sure some of the other governing body members will probably echo some of what I say, but we got to go, a long-standing tradition, and go to the state capitol this last week for a thing called Barbecue on the Hill, where we get to go and kind of advocate for our community of Spring Hill to the state senators and representatives. That this year we did it slightly different in that we only the representatives that represent our area were in the room, which I actually liked a little bit better, because a lot of times in previous times we'd go there and just some random senators and representatives would show up because it's free barbecue, and didn't really affect us or benefit us much other than, you know, making connections. That was about it. So this was kind of a little bit more intimate. We could speak directly with the people that might actually be able to affect us or help us and help our community. So I thought it was pretty successful, and I'll leave the floor open to anyone else that wants to comment about that, or if you have anything else. Mr. Young.
No report.
Mr. Peel.
I just want to reiterate how proud I am of the police department and the awards that we had tonight. Man, those are pretty heart-touching stories.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's what it's all about. So, congratulations to those officers and all of our PD.
Yeah, we got a pretty good PD. Pretty proud of him. Mrs. Feedback.
I have a couple of things. I want to echo the same thing about the what the PD's doing and everything that they're doing for our community. I really appreciate it. Had a couple of things. Have you or somebody designated gone to a Miami County Commission meeting? That was something I had put on there, that once a quarter we work on the communication with the various counties.
The mayor and I just went down, was it a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
We go down for the Miami County mayors and managers meeting, and we met with them. It wasn't during their commission meeting, but it was right before their commission meeting, and most of the governing body was there. And during that meeting, we discuss what's going on within the community. They give us ideas what's going on within Paola and the other cities in Lewisburg, and Osawatomie and Fontana is represented. So, yeah, the short answer is yes. We were down there. I think
And we do that about six times a year. We meet
Yeah.
together with the commission. community.
And they get a report on Spring Hill too?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay, and is there any on 183rd? I know there's some developing things. Is there anything that we can share or no,
I don't think that's pretty well,
on the signalization? No?
yeah, still not, just basically where it's at.
Okay. And then Pat, in your report, is there any new developments or anything that you can share with the community that is,
We are working on several
okay,
annexation agreements,
okay,
and that will lead to development in the core area, areas that have not been annexed in, and they're an area within an annexed area, so there is quite a bit of that going on.
okay,
So infill, and not small pieces, large pieces.
okay. I did not have any other, thanks.
Mr. Grant,
No report.
Mr. Massey.
Once again, want to thank Public Works for clearing off the streets. I heard them really early in the morning, scraping the streets, and it was nice to be able to get around the neighborhoods. And I think, I'm not going to steal his thunder, but if he wants to talk about it, but I think they did a great job today. The streets are pretty well off. You know, luckily we didn't have 15 inches like we did before, so it was a little bit easier job for him this time.
Mr. Lau.
I'm just gonna apologize in advance for 6 executive sessions tonight.
Captain Khan or Chief Khan, whichever you prefer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was actually just going to echo what Lane said. When I was driving in after the snow, when I left my neighborhood, none of the streets were done, which I expected. I got onto some of the main streets in Shawnee, and they weren't done. Got onto K7, it wasn't done. And it was not until I got into Spring Hill that I touched pavement and was able to go the speed limit. So, outstanding job again, guys.
Mr. Burton.
I do, I just. Or sit, and I don't like to sit, so. Good evening. I would imagine that you've heard about House Bill 2088. If you haven't, it's a fast track permitting bill that's out there. There's several municipalities that have contacted us to put in an opposition. We do not feel like that we need to do that. Community development, we keep up with everything. We are already tied to several timelines anyway with plating and things like that. We just feel like that for the residents, the property owners, the developers, builders, you know, it's really our obligation to try and get it as fast as we can anyway. You know, not making mistakes and things like that.
Yeah, we don't want to cut any corners.
I think we do a good job at that. So just want to let you know, unless we're directed, we are not going to oppose it.
All right, sounds good.
Mrs. Abel. Madam Clerk.
No report,
Mrs. Dunn.
No report.
Mrs. Jones.
We have our aquatic center lifeguards, deck and grounds attendants, and concessions and front desk positions posted. So look forward to seeing a lot of applications come in for that as we prepare for 2025 summer.
When it's 3 degrees outside, everybody's thinking about swimming.
Well, then it gets them in a good mood and they apply, so.
Mr. Spear.
Yeah, it's snow removal and aquatic season prep, all in the same week. As Lane had indicated, our folks did a great job again with this, you know, this small little winter storm that kicked up this week. Came in early, you know, they drove through the snow on untreated roads to get here so they could treat our roads. Did about a 24-hour shift. 2 crews, you know, 12 hours each, and I was really happy. Just about exactly 12 hours after the snowfall ended, we had every street in the city clear, completely pushed back to the curb. So it was a great effort. If anyone out there was in that, while they did a great job, there were a few lawns that had some additional landscaping where the plow got over the curb, and a few mailboxes that are not as close to the street as they used to be. So if anyone has situations like that, call, email Public Works. We have a list going, and as soon as things thaw out and the weather cooperates, we'll get all that property restored.
Sounds good. With that, I entertain a motion to move into executive session number 1.
Are these all named properly so I can just move through them?
I believe they are now,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Number 1, I move the city council recess into executive session for 15 minutes to receive advice to council regarding land use and economic development at KSA 75-4319B2 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers at, let's see, 7:52 p.m. No formal action is anticipated following the session. Person to be in attendance of the following: Lane Massey, City Administrator; Spencer Louse, and City Attorney Pat Burton, Community Development Director.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. See you guys shortly. All right, welcome back, everybody. Let the record reflect that the governing body reconvened in open meeting at 7:52 p.m. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject stated. With that, I entertain a motion to move into executive session number 2.
That was fast. All right. So I move the city council recess into executive session for 15 minutes to receive advice of council regarding economic development to KSA 754319B2 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers at, let's see,
08.
08, there we go. At 8:08 p.m., no formal action is anticipated following the session. Persons to be in attendance are the following: Lane Massey, City Administrator; Spencer Lau, City Attorney; Pat Burton, Community Development Director.
Second.
Got a motion, and a second. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. See you guys in a bit. Welcome back, everyone. Let the record reflect that the governing body reconvened in open meeting at 8:08 p.m. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject stated. With that, I entertain a motion to move into executive session number 3.
I move the city council recess an executive session for 15 minutes to receive advice of council regarding economic development to KSA 754319. B2 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers at
8:24.
8:24 p.m. No formal action is anticipated following the session. Persons to be in attendance are the following: Lane Massey, City Administrator; Spencer Lau, City Attorney.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. See you again. Welcome back, everyone. Let the record reflect that the governing body reconvened into open meeting at 8:24 p.m. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject stated. With that, I entertain a motion to move into executive session number 4.
Move the city council recess in executive session for 5 minutes for the preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property pursuant to KSA 754319B6 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers at 8:30 p.m. No formal action is anticipated following the session. Persons to be in attendance are the following: Lane Massey, City Administrator; Spencer Lau, City Attorney.
Second.
Got a motion second. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. See you soon. Welcome back, everyone. Let the record reflect that the governing body reconvened in an open meeting at 8:30 p.m. No votes were taken or decisions made in executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject say. With that, I entertain a motion to move into executive session number 5.
15 for this?
I think so.
Yes.
All right. I move city council recess into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers at 8:46 p.m. No formal action is anticipated following the session. Person to be in attendance: Lane Massey, City Administrator; Spencer Lau, City Attorney.
Second.
The motion is second. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. Welcome back, everyone. Let the record reflect that the governing body reconvened in open meeting at 8:46 p.m. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject stated. With that, I entertain a motion to move into executive session number 6 and the final one.
I move city council recess and executive session for 10 minutes to discuss matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers at 8:57 p.m. No formal action is anticipated following the session. Persons to be in attendance are just the governing body members only.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. See you soon. Welcome back, everyone. Let the record reflect the governing body reconvened in open meeting at 8:57 PM. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject stated. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Or moved. So-
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. Have a great night, everyone. Another executive session? Anyone?